Indonesia, a paradise of 1,000 islands, formed by the creator of the universe. Blessed with natural resources to protect and preserve its magical and unique habitats. 1,000 unique local languages and sacred culture you never imagined. That derives more wonders across Indonesia archipelago. All of this magical and uniqueness become Indonesia's strength and protected by a sacred manifesto, Bhinneka Tunggal Ika. Indonesia is the next G20 presidency in 2022. We welcome you to be prepared for a lifetime magical experience.
Kalau perlu payung dari BUT ya kita ambil.
Suka Budi. Maybe we can use the
highlighting the importance of efforts related to gender equality and G20's commitment to women's empowerment. G20 Empower was launched in Japan during the 2019 summit. In the 2020 G20 Saudi presidency, Empower focused on realizing opportunities of the 21st century for all. Following that,
Does anybody hear me? Could
presidency
you
in
just check
2021,
on your
Empower
background, please?
focused on
This is
people,
Anke Jenko.
planet, and prosperity. Through the years, the Alliance has built a network of over 400 advocates consisting of CEOs or heads of foundations and associations to support the advancement of women as business leaders. As the G20 presidency in 2022, Indonesia's vision is to focus on an inclusive global recovery after the COVID-19 pandemic. Let's do our best in 2022 to recover together, recover stronger, through the advancement of women in leadership roles.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the first side event of G20 Empower 2022. We will begin this event shortly, and to ensure a smooth and uninterrupted program, allow us to inform some of our basic online rules. Participants are required to attend this meeting using a laptop or a computer. Interpreter system is available in English and Bahasa Indonesia. Kindly use your real name in this meeting. This will help the committee to identify and pin you if needed. Please turn your camera on at all times, and during our session, please make sure to turn the microphone off. Make sure you have a stable internet connection. Please use the virtual background that has been sent by the committee, and make sure you have downloaded the latest version of WebEx, or you can download it from the link attached in the chat box. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, our distinguished advocates and delegates of the G20 Empower Welcome to the first side event of G20 Empower 2022, Building a Safer Workplace for Women Post-COVID. Please give virtual applause to all of us in here. My name is Tira Lundi and I will be your MC today. Ladies and gentlemen, women's safety in general remains a significant challenge in many parts of the world. Workplace environment for women is one of the main concerns. Whereas women these days are working in various fields, standing at equal levels as a man, yet many women are still facing gender inequality and greater exposure to discrimination and violence. Desired event is conducted to discuss, share, and provide necessary input how private sector and governments can contribute to create safer and better workplace for women, especially during and post-COVID-19. This discussion will be divided into two sharing sessions from both the private sectors and government. Ladies and gentlemen, this meeting is equipped with an interpreter feature. To access it, simply click the globe icon at the bottom left of your screen. If you wish to turn the interpretation feature off, please select original audio on the menu. If you need the Bahasa Indonesia or English interpretation feature, please select the Indonesia or English channel. You can adjust the volume of the interpreter and speaker's voice by using the switch as shown on your screen. Should you encounter any issues, please contact the host or the interpreters via chat box. Before we invite our co-chairwoman for her welcome remarks, allow us to extend our gratitude to our sponsor, Sinarmas. Thank you for supporting this event. So ladies and gentlemen, let's begin with the welcome remarks from the co-chairwoman of G20 Empower. Please welcome Ms. Rinawati Prihatiningsi. Hello, Ms. Rina, would you please to
Yes.
unmute? Yes.
Okay. Can you hear me? Oops. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, of course.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. The Honorable Minister of Labor of the Republic of Indonesia, Her Excellency Dr. Ida Fauzia, the Honorable Deputy Minister for Gender Equality, Ministry of Women Empowerment and Child Protection, Ibu Leni Rosalin, my partners in G20 Empower Initiative, Ibu Yesi Yosetia as Chair, Bapak Indra Gunawan and Ibu Eko Novi as a government representative and G20 Empower Indonesia team, distinguished moderators, speakers, and participants, ladies and gentlemen. Greetings from Jakarta, and may God, the Almighty, bestow health and peace upon us all. It is my pleasure to welcome and to open the first side event of G20 Empower 2022 under Indonesia's presidency with the theme of Building a Safer Workplace for Women Post-COVID. Honorable distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, G20 Empower Initiative is a crucial alliance between private and government sector to voice and promote the importance of women's roles and leadership in the world of work and business, especially the private sector. Therefore, building from the Beijing Declaration Platform for Action 1995, as well as from the Brisbane Goal to 2014, which are in line with the SDGs, G20 Empower is intended to build stronger awareness and to drive action on how the roles of women in the world of work and business can be improved and accelerated. The current global health crisis is an unprecedented and wake-up call, which is show us that the challenges are still significant to enhance and to improve the position of women in workforce and workplace, despite the progress that had been made before pandemic. With that note, it is important to open up the discussion like today and to gain insight from business communities and government across G20 member countries on how to build a better gender lens in workplace for women that will lead to the creation of building a safer workplace. It is my and our hope, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, that today's event will be productive and that together we can scale up good practices and lessons learned and come up with valuable recommendation and conclusion, which will be beneficial to generate real action to close the gender gap. For this occasion, on behalf of G20 Empower Indonesia, allow me to extend our appreciation for the good contribution and collaboration from all parties involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rinawati Prihatiningsih, for your welcome remarks. So, ladies and gentlemen, moving on the next welcome remarks from the Deputy Minister for Gender Equality, Ministry of Women Empowerment and Child Protection of Indonesia, and please welcome Ms. Leni Rosalin.
Her Excellency Ibu Ida Fauzia, Minister for Manpower of the Republic of Indonesia, Honorable Ibu Yesi Yosetia, Chairwoman of G20 Empower Indonesia, Honorable Ibu Rinawati Prihatiningsih, Co-Chairwoman of G20 Empower Indonesia, Honorable speakers, participants, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the first side event of G20 Empower Indonesia Presidency 2022. Today, we conduct this event in hybrid due to the ongoing COVID-19 epidemic. The theme of the seminar, which is Building Safer Workplace for Women at the Post-COVID Pandemic, is timely, relevant, and important. High appreciation expressed to G20 Empower Indonesia Presidency 2022, who have brought this issue forward. We are expecting that the issue doesn't finish in this discussion table, but for going further to be embedded in the outcome documents of G20 Summit, and even more to be adopted into national policies of its G20 delegates countries and companies. Ladies and gentlemen, in global setting, women's labor force is 47%, while men's is 72%. That's a difference of 25%, with some regions facing gap of more than 50%. For Indonesia, our women labor force is 53% compared to 82% of men. There is a gender gap about 29%. Thus, it's time for us to improve and strengthen the participation and role of women in labor and other development sectors. Increase of women labor force will not only improve women's economic participation and the share income of women to the economy, but also in the economic growth of a country. In the long run, this will give positive impacts to the improvement of Human Development Index, Gender Development Index, and Gender Empowerment Index, because in those three indexes, the factor of economy workplace critical aspect. COVID-19 pandemic has made disproportionately catastrophic impact to women than that of men. It causes not only health and economic crisis, but also worsen burden and violence. Research by UNFPA estimates that 31 million additional gender-based violence and violence against women happened during the first 6 months of COVID-19 lockdown worldwide. An additional 15 million cases are expected in every 3 months that lockdowns continue. Safer workplace for women is an important issue, which is currently growing. Certain group of people, such as essential workers or those suspected to be carriers of COVID-19, is at risk of stigmatization, discriminations, and violence. Those who are working in services may also face aggression from clients and customers who may be feeling stressed due to service delay and disrupts as impact of the pandemic. This mostly happen to female health professionals, especially nurses, who are mostly women. The risk of violence and abuse by employers, work supervisors, and fellow workers may also happen to economically vulnerable workers, a violence directly associated with power of control. Women online workers are also susceptible to online-based gender violence. Many statistics show us how massive the prevalence of violence in the workplace and in the online platform. There are actions both policy, practitioners, and employers can take to address this risk and improve employee and community well-being and create safer and resilient workplace. Ladies and gentlemen, we have here experts, advocates, policy practitioners, and top leaders of multinationals and international companies. We are expecting all of you can make most benefits of your expertise to address these issues. Building a safer workplace is not a policy discourse. It is an urgent cause of policy actions, especially in this post-pandemic era. Women have been disproportionately impacted by the pandemic, and we will do everything we can to protect women from a worse impacts of unsafe workplace. We welcome recommendations which are practical, both in policy perspective and program execution. It is also has to be general, meaning that it can be embedded into our G20 summit documents, can be adopted by most countries attending the event, and most importantly, can be implemented by our companies and industries. Last but not least, we thank to all W20 and B20 delegates, experts, and practitioners. Welcome to the vibrant and fruitful discussion of building safer place for women in post-COVID-19. Thank you very much to G20 Empower. And again, have a good discussion this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Leni Rosalin, for your remarks. So, ladies and gentlemen, joining us today is the Minister of Labor of the Republic of Indonesia. Please give a warm welcome for Her Excellency, Ms. Ida Fauzia.
Honorable Mrs. Rinawati Prihatiningsi, the G20 Empower Co-Chairwomen, Dr. Raden Edi Priopambudi, Co-Sherpa Indonesia, panelists and moderators from Empower G20 representative, as well as ladies and gentlemen. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Peace be upon you. Good afternoon from Jakarta. It is a great honor for me to be here with all of you today at the first side event of G20 Empower 2022 with its theme Building a Safer Workplace for Women Post-COVID in support of the G20 presidency of Indonesia in 2022. This event is a continuation of the commitment of the G20 member countries to increase women's empowerment in the world of work. This opportunity is part of our shared commitment in the G20 economy to increase participation and economic opportunities for women by supporting their role and position in the workplace to achieve a fair and decent work environment that is free from gender discrimination. This commitment is also a manifestation of our previous commitment to the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action 1995 and G20 Brisbane Goals 2014. These two commitments are in line with the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda, which aim to leave no one behind. We would do this by increasing our efforts towards improving inclusivity and sustainable economic growth, productive and comprehensive employment opportunities, and decent work for all. On this optimistic occasion, I would like to convey my appreciation and gratitude to the event organizers, all participants, and all parties who have contributed to supporting the running of this event. Thank you for taking your valuable time to be an important part of this event. Distinguished guests, this event provides the right momentum for all of us to discuss, share, and provide input towards a safer and better work environment for women, especially during the pandemic and the era of digital disruption, which puts women at higher risk of receiving lower wages from working in the informal sectors, along with a higher risk of working in non-standard work that could be unsafe. Women are also at a higher risk of being underrepresented in the middle and senior management position, despite their rapid increase in educational attainment in recent decades. At the same time, the representation of women in STEAM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics is also still too low. The pandemic has also shown us the urgency to formulate strategies and find solutions to mitigate its impact. The health crisis has created greater pressure on the current system, including socio-economic facilities, which also affects the sustainability of women workers. Therefore, we must see the issue of empowering women in the workplace as essential as it would lead to a better life for women. The G20 leaders have made commitments on many issues that women are facing, including those in the economic sector. Women's full participation is aims toward improving the economy and education. Some issues of concern include eliminating discrimination in the world of work, creating better working conditions, having women ownership of financial assets, and promoting women's leadership. These issues have long been the focus of the G20 Minister of Manpower, who then agreed on a commitment to reduce the labor force participation gap between men and women by 25% by the years 2025. This commitment is contained in the Brisbane Goals 2014, which listed a series of key policy principles to improve the quality of women's empowerment. Distinguished guests, the government of Indonesia continues to encourage the G20 to improve equality and empower women around the world through various progressive interventions. Indonesia believes that advancing gender equality in the world of work will promote inclusive and sustainable economic growth, particularly for the development of the G20 economy. The gender gap in Indonesia has continued to decline since 2015. In 2021, the gender gap in Indonesia's labor force participation rate is 28.93%. This figure is lower than compared to 2015, which was 33.84%. Recalling our achievements in the last 5 years, Indonesia is optimistic that we can achieve the Brisbane target commitment by 2025. To do this, the government of Indonesia will continue and strengthen cooperation with relevant national institutions and social partners, as well as international organizations, to develop and improve the quality competitiveness of community skills both at the national and international levels. In addition, the government of Indonesia is optimistic about achieving Antalia's commitment to the 2025 target, which is to reduce the youth employment rates to 15% by 2025. The government of Indonesia continues to strengthen its national efforts in skills development through job training, internship, self-employment to better prepare young people in facing the transition in the world of work. Ladies and gentlemen, through this year's G20 presidency, Indonesia will continue to encourage the role of the G20 to ensure the community development is carried out in an inclusive, fair, and prosperous manner. Indonesia is pushing for the efforts to continuously manage the impact of the pandemic and to prepare for its recovery by collaborating with other stakeholders within the G20 member countries to support commitment in various fields. We do this, for example, by promoting inclusive economic growth, creating money sustainable and human-centered jobs, providing quality jobs for youth and women, and providing access to adequate social protection for all. Indonesia, through the promotion of dialogue, will encourage the G20 to work together in data collection and provide job skill trainings for workers, especially for women, so that they can obtain work or make the efforts to be economically productive to increase income for themselves and their families. This effort needs to be targeted and scaled up to achieve the development goals identified by the G20 leaders, including gender equality and the empowerment of all women and girls, as well as full and productive work and decent work for all women and men. Through the spirit of humanity, cooperation, and collaboration, we need to increase the efforts to promote national policies and measures towards empowering women in the workplace so that they can obtain their right and receive equal treatment and access to work without gender discrimination. Distinguished guests, I would like to end my remarks by thanking you for your participation in this event. Our participation today is part of our efforts to recover together in an inclusive and ever better way. Togetherness and cooperation are the main keys to these efforts. The government cannot work alone. For this, we encourage more stakeholders and social partners to play a greater role in mainstreaming women's empowerment by providing more recommendations, developing policies, programs, and other supporting tools, as well as providing access, employment, and entrepreneurial opportunities for women, as well as creating more opportunities in our society and economy. As a closing, I would like to quote the word of wisdom, which states, "Women are the pillars of the state. If the woman is good, then the country is good, and vice versa." Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Ms. Ida Fauzia, for your warm remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, in these following sessions, we will delve more onto the theme that is building a safer workplace for women post-COVID. We will also look forward for a positive outcome for this discussion, and later we will conduct Q&A session. To participate, you can simply drop your question on the chat box along with the desired speakers. So ladies and gentlemen, to lead the first session, it is my honor to introduce our moderator. Please welcome Margaret Suteman Reinen.
Thank you very much, Tara, for your welcoming. Thank you, Your Excellency, for your very wise words. Thank you, Rina, for your introduction. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the first session of this side event. I'm Margaret Suteman Reinen, and I'm going to moderate the panel discussion. But before we start, we would like to make a picture. So I'm asking everybody to make sure that your camera is on, so that our organization can make a group photo of us all working very hard on women empowerment. So all smile. Yes, and we have all a big smile, everybody. Perfect. 1, 2, 3, a bigger smile. Thank you so much. Perfect. As we all know, there are pre-existing gaps on gender equality in our workforce, and this situation worsens during the global pandemic. The COVID-19 pandemic has significant implications to women, especially women in employment and the workforce. And according to the ILO report in 2021, women face much more significant difficulty, especially having higher risk of job loss, increased and unpaid care work, and greater exposure to discrimination and violence, as just both Excellency also elaborated on. During COVID-19 in 2020, around 41% of women were employed in high-risk jobs, including with the impact to job losses and reduced working hours, compared to only 35% of male employment. This crisis also affected on how countries and private sectors can achieve the targeted gender equality indicators in the workplace. These concerning situations try to be acknowledged by G20 Empower. We're all here today to discuss this together and to find solutions. However, the task to minimize the gender gap in workplace and workforce, amplified with the pandemic conditions and the multiple transformative issues, including technology, should be addressed comprehensively. Therefore, it's important to have an open discussion and to gain insight from business communities across our G20 member countries on how to build a better gender lens in workplace for women that lead to the creation of building a safer workplace, especially during, but more especially even post-COVID. To gain the insights and good practice from the private sectors, in this session we have 4 spokespersons. And I'm very pleased to welcome the 4 persons before we'll give them the floor. My first speaker will be Ms. Shinta Kamdani. Shinta is owner and chief executive of the Syntesa Group, and she's responsible for the management and expansion of the group's business interests in Indonesia. The Syntesa Group is an Indonesian group with 16 subsidiaries which operate in the property, energy, industrial products and consumer products. Shinta has a fantastic CV, too much to mention. I'd like to mention 2 things which I thought were really standing out. She's also an alum from Harvard Business School, so am I, so I'd like to definitely point it out. And she's been decorated Commander of the Polar Star by King Carl of Gustav of Sweden and the Commander of the Order of Leopold in Belgium. So fantastic, Shinta, to have you here. The second guest, which today will be with us, is Mrs. Barbara Cominelli from Italy. She's the CEO of GLL, And she has more than 25 years of managerial experience in multiple roles. Before GLL, she also worked for Microsoft. She worked for Vodafone, an extensive senior leader with us. She's graduated cum laude from Bocconi University. And she's been awarded twice in the top 50 of most inspirational women in technology in Europe. Our third distinguished guest is Dr. Willy Ceylan. He's the Director of Human Resources of Unilever in Indonesia. And he's been with Unilever for a long time, have had various roles. And he earned a bachelor's degree in social and political science of Leeds in the UK. My last guest is Romilly Madhu. And Romilly Madhu is the Chief Executive Officer of Infrastructure Australia. She's had a long-lasting career. Amongst others, she was CEO of Green Building Council of Australia for 13 years. And in acknowledgement of her contribution to Australia's sustainable building movement, Ms. Madhu was awarded an Order of Australia in 2019. And she's globally recognized as a leader and advocate for change in the property and construction sector. So as we all can see, a very prominent panel of speakers. And as we only have 30 minutes, I'm going to straight away move in and ask Ms. Shinta Kandani. Ms. Shinta, thank you so much for joining us today. In your view as the owner and chief executive officer of the Syntesa Group, what are the main challenges and obstacles women participation in workforce and workplace experience during the global pandemic? Ms. Shinta.
Thank you, Margaret, and thank you, G20 Empower, for this opportunity. I actually also have some slides prepared, just based on your questions. So I would like to share that for ease purposes. So as you know, it has been more than 2 years, right, since the COVID-19 pandemic first hit the world, and it really has transformed our life, and we're still left picking up the pieces. The world has struggled to contain and mitigate the effects of COVID-19, and no person, sector, or country has escaped the impact of this pandemic. But these effects, unfortunately, have not equally distributed with certain groups, including women. I think it was mentioned before that facing multiple layers of inequality, we've seen a huge setback in gender equality progress lately. And the rising rate of digitalization, significant increases in household responsibility, and lack of support for women in navigating these changes have radically altered women economic participation. I fear that if we do nothing to address widening gender gaps, this situation will only continue to worsen and potentially undo decades of progress, which is an incredibly disheartening prospect. So achieving, I think, gender equality requires collaboration from every player and stakeholder, including the private sector. The private sector plays an important role in the path to women economic recovery and gender equality. I think the survey always shows that people globally believe that the private sector must lead on gender initiative. It is imperative for the private sector to take action now, as the delaying will be very detrimental. To fully support the women empowerment and gender equality, company needs to first understand their employees' need by gathering and listening to their perspective. And this is what we're also doing in Syntesa. There are 4 ways in which the private sector can push for gender equality in the post-pandemic era. First is narrowing the gender and pay gap in the workplace. Across all the 17 nations in the survey, respondents rated achievement of equal pay as the top measure to increase economic justice. And I think the private sector can definitely play a key role in advancing women economic empowerment, enacting measures that address pay inequalities. Also, second, the preventing violence and sexual harassment. I think 38% of women reported to have experienced sexual harassment in the workplace. And this number is very concerning, and the private sector has an important role also to play in diminishing it. Third is ensuring girls and women are equipped to meet the challenges of tomorrow through access to education, training program, and job opportunities in STEM. I think many had said that encouraging women to pursue careers in science, in STEMs and employment connected to climate change should be a top priority. Also, the last one is improving access to accurate online sexual education and health services. I think that again, we also play a big role in the healthcare delivery. Alongside implementing policies, employers have to remember to actively communicate with their employees and ensure that the policies and program are executed well. And this is, I think, one thing that we learned from this pandemic and how Syntesa, our group, has strived forward communicating for gender empowerment in the organization post-COVID-19 that focus on two objectives. First is to support women employees to re-entering the workplace and promoting the role of women in the future of work called Syntesa for Women that focus also in these activities. So if you look at the first flexible working arrangement, I think this is where our policy comes into place, which has proven effective in helping our workers, especially women, adjusting to this new normal situation. And I think this is important, especially to support on how women with the additional responsibility during the COVID will be able to manage and still come back in the workplace. In addition, also promoting the use of technology for telework and strengthening our childcare service infrastructure to support our employees to return in the workplace. The second is empowerment and advancement. We believe in the 70-20-10 model for learning and development, where individuals obtain 70% of their knowledge from job-related experiences, 20% from interaction, and 10% from formal education. So through this lens, we will utilize the Syntesa for Women as a learning curve, internal engagement and empowerment through a series of focus group discussion, training and development, gathering and sharing session. So we have now what we call the Women Leader Sharing Session. We are preparing this quarterly routine to aim in providing our employees with access to knowledge and experience of notable women leaders from various backgrounds who made their success despite facing the gender-based stereotypes. Also, the technology training and workshop, which will invest in training program and digital platform, especially for our women employees in administration work and prone to disrupted by digitalization. This is particularly essential and necessary for their development. The third is empathy and collaboration. We believe in creating a safer and better work environment are essential for everyone, especially in the pandemic. 1 in 3 women are vulnerable to experience sexual harassment on the workplace. So this is why Syntesa always strives to eliminate this issue in the organization. We have initiated several actions like hashtag share and care of gender violence program in the workplace. Through a more personalized approach, we are encouraging every worker to speak up or tell a trusted confidant if they happen to experience a sexual or gender-based violence. Standing up alone might be terrifying, but when more people are starting to speak up and join forces, we can expose more violence and take necessary measures to eliminate the problem. Also, we have to provide weekly counseling. We're always striving to create a better work environment for our worker, both physically and mentally. Those we are planning to provide professional counseling also to help our employees navigate their personal issues and trauma. And the third is promoting transparency and accountability. I think globally, less than half of business priorities gender reporting. This is not in Syntesa Group case. As one of the leading groups certified by EDGE, the Economic Dividend on Gender Equality, we see gender reporting as an important tool to evaluate organization commitment towards gender empowerment. So during the pandemic, we have strengthened our efforts by working closely with the Indonesian Business Coalition of Women Empowerment. This is an organization that I started and bringing businesses and companies to participate to execute in the gender reporting framework by utilizing gender gap analysis tool. This is imperative to evaluate the measure and getting feedback to develop gender empowerment policy in the workplace. We have also hosted several gender reporting workshops in all our subsidiaries to ensure that the gender reporting is well implemented in all our organizations. So that's basically the answer of your first question. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your insights. It's very interesting to see that you mentioned a number of challenges like I've written some of them down: the gender pay gap, the violence, sexual harassment to women, education to make sure, girls and women are prepared for the challenges which are currently on our path, digitization you mentioned. Mrs. Barbara Cominelli, what are your thoughts on the various challenges raised by our previous speaker, Ms. Shinta, or do you see any other on the horizons? Barbara, can you please unmute?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I actually very interesting, and thanks for the question. I also have a few slides to show on some example and best practice of how the private sector is tackling some of the challenges that were mentioned. In our company, we work with thousands of clients. We manage more or less 4 billion of space for our workplace for our clients. And what we see today after COVID is a big opportunity. So hybrid work, flexible working clearly are here to stay. And more or less at the global level, we see company on average moving towards 2-3 days flex a week. We see a workforce that is really more central with the war for talent and the awareness that the way of working should be human-centric. And so this is another important topic. And what we are seeing is the most progressive company moving towards what we call the regenerative workplace. The workplace today and the workforce, they're moving toward a more human-centric model. And that's also reflected on the office. The office is not anymore a place to go where I sit from 9 to 5 and it's place. The office is a tool. It's a tool that people can use like other tools they have available to perform in the best way possible their tasks. And so what we are seeing is a new purpose of the office that has a lot to do with the well-being, the safety, and the health of the workers. So it's a platform now, the office, to collaborate, socialize, learn, innovate. We are all seeing how difficult it was to do these things fully remotely. And there is a renewed focus on engagement, on culture, on creating the belonging. There is this very, very strong focus on health and well-being because it's clear that the safety is of the people working, especially women, is physical safety that we need to guarantee. But to be honest, today, probably even more important is the mental safety that we need to guarantee to the people, the well-being that we need to guarantee to the people, on top, of course, of the physical safety of the places where people go and work. So, of course, to do this, technology is more and more important. And so we see smart buildings, smart cities, smart spaces that enable this new way of working. And finally, green and ESG and sustainability, circularity, the new way of the future of the workplaces we have in front of us is for sure going to be green. So whatever the new offices, the new workplaces we are designing with our clients, they really have sustainability and equity in terms of gender, but not only at the center. And I would like to bring a couple of examples of what it means on a practical level. So you can move to the next slide, please. To the next, thank you. Here already mentioned, the mental health component, the social health component, and the physical health component are pieces of the same puzzle, ingredients of the same recipe, where we should really all aim at a different experience, a different way of working for our employees. And so what we are seeing emerging in most, the previous one, sorry. We're seeing emerging in most progressive company is really a focus on how to design the work experience. And for example, with some clients, we have developed this diversity, inclusion, and belonging certification. That means that when I build the space and the experience in the office, I have to consider more or less, we're talking about here, they are summarized, but there are hundreds of KPIs that consider the gender equity, of course, that's the super important and let's say the basics of an hygienic factor for most progressive company, but also physical accessibility to cater for other type of diversities, the aging of the population, because of course each of us moving forward, we will have problems in moving, in seeing, in getting around the places where we are, and this is let's say another way to look at a place where today we also have 3 or 4 sometimes generation of people in the office. Sexual identity and orientation is another key criteria to design spaces and experience, but also today we are more attentive to mental health, as I mentioned, and neurodiversity. Not all of us learn, interact, collaborate, work in the same way, and that's where the attention to how we design the experiences for employees is very important, to include also different way of learning and working, and of course ethnicity and culture. So the more we move toward a structured way of addressing and designing the experience in all these areas, the more we will make sure that gender and all the other type of diversities are included, and we value the talent of all the people that we have in our companies. And in the next slide, you also see some examples of what it means. These are actually the basics for gender equity. The on-site of close by childcare, spaces for moms, transparency in design, the language, the signals, and more and more in the design and in the choice of the offices. What is important is also making sure that you have a safe proximity and same routes. We do see with our clients avoiding not choosing offices or moving offices because the space is becoming unsafe. Yeah. So these are just basic things, but maybe we can consider them the hygienics, no, of what you should cater for. And I think it's the opportunity is here. Now the world of work is transforming, the spaces are transforming, and so if we manage now to make them more inclusive, we have. I'm not saying that we have solved the problem, but we have maybe added a little bit of an ingredient to the entire recipe.
Yeah, thank you so much, Barbara, for your very wise words. It's indeed very important not only to focus on physical safety, but also mental safety. And we do have questions around pregnant mothers to have breastfeeding. Of course, it depends on the company's policies. When you have a company who is willing to embrace more women in the workforce, and of course, companies like GLL can build this in the design of an office space. We're moving to Mr. Willy. He's HR director of Unilever, a company very close to my heart. I know some of your colleagues, Willy, so quite well, so quite interesting. Can you give us a little bit your insights around how Unilever is taking transformative actions, and what is your experience on this? What are your thoughts and your actions?
Yeah, so thank you very much for the opportunity. And in Unilever, we would like to say that actually the strategy itself, the company strategy itself, which is hinging on purpose, on contributing to a fairer and more socially inclusive world, is very important. So Unilever has a strategy called Compass Strategy, and that is global long-term strategy. And the issue with I think with many companies is that women empowerment, diversity, inclusions have become HR policies, which is someone in HR is doing it. And what we're doing is that how can we make sure that um, uh, uh, being inclusive, being fair to everyone have become a policy, a strategy, actually, not only policy, but a longer strategy. If I can have my slide just to share what they are. And this is very transformative because it involves the, unfortunately, the slide is quite small. If you can see that the left-hand side is about how we want to improve the planet, and the second column there is about improving the confidence and well-being on people. But I would like us to focus on the right-hand side, which is to contribute to a fairer and more socially inclusive world. Now, it is very important that we have this at the top corporate strategy. So what we say, what we do, the employees, the brands, the consumers, this would be a basis of how a company operates. Now, this is what we call a social commitment. It's about raising living standards for everyone. But the first of that strategy part is to achieve, it says, achieving equitable and inclusive culture, eliminating bias and discrimination in our practice and policies. And female is sitting at the heart of many things, which most often than not is being left and forgotten. I'm happy to say that Bu Zinda at the Sintesa Group is saying how can the company ensure there's no pay gap for female. Us in Unilever as well, me in Unilever Indonesia is continuously doing that. In fact, we're ensuring that we are looking into all policies within the company, whether they are supportive toward us employing a more inclusive and fair words towards female. And just to go further in ensuring that we make sure we capitalize in the power of women, we want to make sure that not only we are being inclusive, but we also accelerating the diverse representations of female at all levels. And by no means that we want to be inclusive and fair only at lower level, but also all the way to board level. In Unilever Indonesia, we have now CEO, a female CEO, an Indonesian talent, a female CEO, and becoming leading the fourth largest Unilever company globally. And 50% of our board members are female. So we need to start having specific target of what we want to achieve, and having a female at leadership role is very important. Now, to the topic of how can we make sure that the pandemic is not limiting what we want to achieve, because the pandemic hinge on the fact that the issue with the pandemic is that the society is seeing that women participation in the workplace would be limited because of their role at home is also having a traditional role. And therefore, the pressure for female during the pandemic is even greater. And many of colleagues, many of workforce in Indonesia are having the pressure. And I think this is not only relevant to Indonesia, but relevant globally as well, that female are being pressured because the pandemic, they need to operate like super women, right? They need to perform in the workplace, but they also are expected to perform their traditional duties. Now, the advancement of female in the workforce, and then realizing that our policies are also supportive towards ensuring the contribution of female, despite the fact that they are expected to perform equally well at home, because we are employing the hybrid working model, and therefore making sure that our policies are in sync, ensuring that all policies are being reviewed to be our inclusive and empowering female. Now, the commitment from Unilever Global is very fast in ensuring that we contribute to more fairer and social inclusive world. We promise that we will spend 2 billion euro for taking care of our workforce, and they are supportive of companies. How do you say this? That business, diverse business are also participating and contributing towards Unilever businesses, and we want to spend up to 2 billion euros in ensuring that one. And who are our diverse business? And these are groups such as underrepresented groups and people who are LGBTQ, women, minoritically racial group, etc. So a lot of initiative which as a company we must do, I think, Barbara, in this sense. So that's I can add from Unilever's point of view. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Billy. I know Unilever very well. Quite interestingly, Unilever is a company with a deep purpose. So we talk about purpose a lot, but Unilever actually has a deep purpose, which also implies that, and it's just been written in a book about Ranjay Gulati, that you are a high growth company. There is a correlation of companies having a deep purpose and also having high growth.
Indeed.
If I may, before I move to the next speaker, what's so interesting, this is not an HR issue. You are an HR director, but this, women empowerment is a leadership issue. And indeed, in the Unilever board, Cordy Braams and Hanneke Faber are ladies I know quite well. And they take this really very seriously. And also because they say, like, you can be what you can see. So if you can see role models, and also if you can see how the policies work out, that's really an advantage. So we're moving to the next speaker, which is Mrs. Romilly from Australia. I'm really interested to learn your experiences at Infrastructure Australia. So please take the floor.
Thank you so much. Good evening, and thank you for hosting the G20 Empower side event. This evening actually coincides with the announcement of the annual national government budget in Australia. As happened last year, the government will publish a women's budget statement that brings together information about all commitments to improve women's leadership, economic security and safety. I'm happy to circulate this document once it's published if there is interest. Tonight we are focusing on building a safer workplace for women, not just a COVID-safe workplace, but one that is safe from harassment and assault, and one that has flexible policies that reinforce gender equality. We know women have been disproportionately impacted by COVID, and that's already been mentioned tonight, so I won't cover on that. But I do want to cover on a couple of things that I think are relevant. Like in other crises, domestic and gender-based violence worsened during the pandemic. Workplaces were encouraged to let women work in person rather than remotely, if that was a safer option for them. At Infrastructure Australia, we have a domestic and family violence support. The purpose of this support is domestic and family violence leave, is to support employees who need time away from the workplace because they have or are experiencing domestic or family violence. Tackling sexual harassment and discrimination of work, which is what this slide is about. The federal government funds a range of initiatives under the National Plan to Reduce Violence Against Women and Their Children. And this includes, for example, the Stop It at the Start TV campaign that encourages adults to have a conversation about respect with young people. Chief Executive Women, which is the senior women's professional body in Australia, and I'm a member of them, have developed a Respect Toolkit you can download from the Chief Executive Women's website to help people and organisations have conversations at work about respect, providing facts about the cost of inequality, draft codes of conduct and reporting frameworks. Set the standard, report on the independent review into Commonwealth parliamentary workplaces shows that more than half of the workforce have experienced bullying, sexual harassment or sexual assault. The report made 28 recommendations on leadership, diversity, equality, performance, accountability, safety and wellbeing, all areas mentioned tonight. And implementing a roadmap for respect, preventing and addressing sexual harassment in Australian workplaces known as Respect at Work report. The government has established a Workplace Sexual Harassment Council and amended the Sexual Discrimination Act. So what this means for the private sector, there are 4 clear recommendations for the private sector. Deliver education to board members and company officers on gender equality and sexual harassment. Add sexual harassment indicators. This is back on the last slide. Add sexual harassment indicators to reporting requirements for the top Australian security companies. Develop accredited training for people who advise employers on harassment, and development industry-wide initiatives to addressing sexual harassment. Next slide, thank you. When considering improving women's economic security, women have more secure when they have their own jobs. More flexible workplaces provide more opportunities for women to find and retain suitable employment. In Australia, women's employment has rapidly recovered from the pandemic. As of February 2022, the workforce participation rate for women is 62%, the highest on record. So to give you some examples from the private sector on supporting women, at Infrastructure Australia, 50% of our board, so we have 12 on our board, 50% are women, 50% male. In Infrastructure Australia's senior leadership team, 50-50, male and female. Infrastructure Australia also has a workforce flexibility in health and wellbeing. We maintain a positive work-life balance, and we allow our staff to work flexibly. Finally, we have paid parental leave policy. At Infrastructure Australia, we are proud to have what we understand is the most flexible and equal paid parental leave scheme within the Australian government. Our new parental leave policy, announced last month, provides a new approach by removing the labels of primary and secondary carers. They're just parents. Removing the requirement that parents take parental leave at different times. Offering equal entitlements of 18 weeks to all parents, offering flexibility in how parental leave is taken. And my next slide, slide 3, supporting women's leadership. In 2019, US Pew Research Center asked whether men or women in top executive positions are better at creating safe and respectful workplaces. In response, 43% said women were better, and 5% said men. Our WGEA agency, Workplace Gender Equality Agency in Australia, collects mandatory reporting on the number of women in leadership roles, gender pay gap, availability of flexible work, policies on sex-based harassment and discrimination, and support for workers who are parents, carers, or experiencing domestic violence. So I want to just use one private sector example. Many of you would be aware of the international design, engineering and advisory company, Oricon. I know that my colleague Barbara from JLL will definitely know who Oricon are. They were recognised again recently as an employer of choice for gender equality by our Workplace Gender Equality Agency, WGEA, for its visible commitment to the cause progress achieved over the past 2 years. So I'll just touch on what they achieved. The highly coveted acknowledgement, Oricon met all criteria set out by WGEA across 7 focus areas, including developing a gender-balanced workforce, mainstreaming flexible work, leadership, strategy and accountability, supporting for caring and gender pay equality. And a couple of really key things to know. They have initiatives such as Respect at Work, an actionable work plan, courageous conversations, parental leave and working part-time. They also have appointed new health, safety and wellbeing leaders to support and enable a thriving workforce. And for example, 4 of 5 regional managing directors across Australia and New Zealand are now female. I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Romalie. It's really interesting to see. I think what's really very, very interesting from your remarks is also the sexual harassment part. I know that Equileap at the moment, Equileap is an organization capturing data on the companies who do have policies in place for sexual harassment. And one of the latest report I saw that only 51% have those policies in place. So that's a huge step forward as private sector, which we can take to get that done. Another element to mention to you is that indeed on the sexual harassment, and for example in the Netherlands, now also the government has taken actions and they've appointed an official, as we call it, Me Too government commissioner to actually really in-depth research what's going on and how we can take the appropriate measures with, you know, the policies to be done. We discussed a lot. We discussed physical safety, but it was also already referenced very shortly psychological safety. Cinta, can you comment a little bit more on the psychological safety of women in the workplace and how you think what things could be done in order to make sure that it's better safeguarded?
Yeah, unfortunately, Margaret, I have to leave soon because we're already past your time. So I wanted to mention specifically on concrete action for the G20 Empower, if you don't mind. I touched a little bit on the psychological safety. I think in that part, I think we need to provide a very an environment in which the safety environment is a crucial aspect for when we talk about women, especially on their psychological set of mind. So we see that we need to provide the right company regulations also and support system infrastructure that can provide such safety. So the regulatory aspect will policies of the company will provide the communication and transparency aspect for women to feel strongly protected on having the counseling and so forth, but the infrastructure to support that is crucially also important. Now, I wanted to before closing, because I have to leave, I wanted to share also specifically, I mentioned about how G20 Empower focus more on implementing concrete action to empower women in 3 ways. First is increasing the corporate accountability and achieving KPIs to enhance the role of women. I think we want private companies to commit to change and create action plans to measures, enforce, and report G20 Empowerment's KPI. We will also collaborate and leverage a global advocacy network to promote accountability. And the government and relevant authorities will support this initiative by facilitating and promoting private sector commitment. Secondly, I think recognizing the role of women-led as MSME as an economic driver and major contributor to the global economy. We will collaborate also with the government and a relevant authority to foster how women growing role in the workforce and extend the woman talent pool to MSME. And the third is building and improving women resilience and skills. I think we'll focus on upscaling to training and master classes. Also will help build private company action plans to design training and mentoring programs based on a key skill gap, both technical and soft skills. So
Cinta, thank you so much for your wise words. This is exactly what the G20 the past years actually has been doing. So these 3 data KPIs, upskilling, reskilling, and indeed STEM. And also SME is one of the additional goals Indonesia has put forward on the G20. So I think what you just said is exactly right, the right mode. I will let you go because I know you have a busy schedule. I would like to, before I go, I would like to make sure that there's one question addressed and I'd like to ask it to Romilly and Willy. Willy, this is really interesting. There's a question like, has the private sector addressed the issue of mother's double duty? So how is in Unilever, how do you actually take a look at parental leave and childcare and indeed breastfeeding and all those things? And is it indeed necessary that we not only change the system, which we need to do, but also that we have to learn our colleagues to deal with these kind of situations, men and women?
Yeah, I think to that one, we've had since a long time ago parental and policies for fathers, new fathers, but also certainly for moms. So we're the number of leaves which we give to female paid leave is much more beyond the legal requirement. But I think most importantly is to recognize the need for mom in the workplace and also at home. So the notion of providing the returning female who have left the company but wanting to work but cannot work full time. So there's the notion of future of work is really at the heart of our initiative, and that's being formalized. We have so many arrangement of how women can go back to workplace flexibly, Barbara.
Yeah, thank you, Lily. And I think that what's really important that post-COVID, and Romilly, if you have a minute to give your comments, but I know that we need to wrap it up because we're going to give the floor to the next panel. Maybe, Romilly, a closing comment from your end?
Yeah, we very much support what Willie was saying. It's the importance of both flexible arrangement for women, but also advocating for men to take parental leave as well, to share the load between men and women. And we also have breastfeeding rooms in many of our corporate offices in Australia. So women have an opportunity to either, if they have their child close or if they need to, express milk during work. So we have arrangements such as that.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Romilly, Shinta, Barbara, and Lily for your wise words and comments. I think it's crucial that we see here as a private sector that we can definitely help making the change. Often we see that we're looking for others to solve the problems, but we know that we have a role to play in this. Also, I would like to recommend, to invest what Volvo did. Volvo actually announced parental leave for the complete workforce, 40,000 colleagues around the globe, in order to actually adjust the environment better to women and to ensure that, also men take parental leave, so to change the culture of the company. We've talked about the gender gap, the gender pay gap. We've talked about childcare, about psychological safety, about physical safety, about education. I think last but not least to mention, this is up to us as leaders to make the change. So the G20 is an initiative which has been taken by the leaders of the world. The leaders of the private sector are aligned as well. And all together, in collaboration, we can make the necessary changes. And let me conclude with this. Having spoken to you today, I have very good hope that your best practices will sound to different companies around the globe. And thank you again for being here with us today. I'm going to give the floor back to our Master of Ceremonies, Tyra. Tyra, back to you.
Okay, thank you, Margaret, and also thank you to all the speakers. And now moving on to the next panel, I will hand the next session over to our next moderator. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Kania Sutisna Winata.
Thank you, Tyra. Good evening from Jakarta to all distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the second session of this side event, this very important side event. I think we witnessed a very insightful first session, which will be, of course, bring a background to the discussion that we are going to have on this second session. Let me introduce myself. My name is Kania Sutisna Winata, and I'm from Indonesia, and I work in the media. And it is an honor for me to be moderating for this panel discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, as we all know, these past 2 years have brought about many challenges to humankind, especially as the pandemic COVID-19 negatively impacted nations around the world with not only health, but also economic and financial consequences that we are still struggling to recover from until now. So I'd like to put out these data as the World Economic Forum last year pointed out that it is going to take 276.6 years to achieve parity in women's economic participation and opportunities. It is highly critical that we engage all stakeholders to act to minimize the gender gap, not despite that it has been worsened by the COVID-19 pandemic, as it highlighted that women bears estimated 3 times as many hours as men in unpaid domestic work and care work, with more exposure in the level of stress and also mental health related conditions. These things that have been elaborated in the first session as well, that will of course further hinder any improvement to women's economic empowerment. But as we all know, establishing gender diversity principles and indicators that are in line with the SDG targets have become important issues for many governments. So now how do we encourage, especially among G20 members countries, to do more and also improve women employment conditions and minimize the gender gap in workforce, not only during COVID-19, but also post-COVID-19, building from the best practices and also lesson learned of the government policy implementation. This session intends to explore government action to support and also improve women roles and position in the workplace and also in the workforce. So I'd like to quote the ILO report in 2021. There are at least 5 topics that the government can oversee to stimulate improvement towards the achievement of SDGs in terms of policies. And these 5 key areas that was also highlighted in the first session are achieving equal pay for work and preventing and eliminating violence and harassment in the workplace, developing a work-life balance for all, promoting women representation in leadership and management position, and also investing future work for women. So these topics drive the discussion further on how government has implemented its measurement to achieve gender equality at the workplace. So without further ado, let me introduce, we have 4 speakers joining us for this session. It is such an honor to have all of them joining me from all over the world. But before inviting them to come join me on screen, I'd like to read perhaps a short bio on each of our panelists so we can get to know them better, but I'm sure you all know them very well already. The first speaker is Dr. Fatma Betul Sayankaya, Deputy of AK Party of Istanbul, Turkey. Ms. Sayankaya is the Turkey representative of the G20 Business World Women Leaders Task Force and the head of the UK Friendship Group. She also served as the Minister of Family and Social Policies in the 65th government. Ms. Sayankaya also served as the AK Party Deputy Chairman in charge of social policies, while continuing her duty as member of the AK Party Central Decision Executive Board and Istanbul Deputy as of March last year. Sayankaya has graduated from Serafasa Medical Faculty. She graduated from Bilkent University Electrical and Electronics Engineering Department with cum laude. She holds a master's degree in thermal imaging of breast cancer from New York University. And the second speaker to join us on this panel is Ms. Anke Jenkel. I hope I'm pronouncing her name right, of the Federal Ministry of Labor and Social Affairs of Germany. Ms. Jenkel is a lawyer working in the Federal Ministry for Labor and Social Issues in Germany, with a focus on gender issues, particularly on measures to improve the participation of women in the labor market. Before she joined the policy department of the ministry almost a year ago, she was concerned with the adaptation of short-time work to weather off the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, on the labor market, and with measures to support women who are seeking a job. The pandemic has shed a light on the still high vulnerability of women, particularly mothers, when it comes to paid work and unpaid family care work. Ms. Jenkel has a law degree from Freiburg University and a master's degree from Exeter University of the UK. And the third speaker is Mr. Anwar Sanusi of the Working Group Employment of Indonesia. Mr. Sanusi is currently Secretary General of the Indonesian Ministry of Manpower from August 2020. Prior to this appointment, he was Secretary General of the Indonesian Ministry of Village Development, of Disadvantaged Region and Transmigration from May 2015. He held many other notable positions in various governmental ministries and agencies along his distinguished career. And Mr. Sanusi holds a Doctor of Philosophy in Public Policy from National Graduate Institute for Policy Studies and a Master in Policy Analysis from the National Graduate Institute for Policy Studies, Saitama University, and a Bachelor of Governance Science from Universitas Gajah Mada. Last but not least, our fourth speaker to join us on this panel is Ms. Aditi Dasrao, Joint Secretary from the Ministry of Women and Child Development of India. Ms. Aditi Dasrao is a civil service officer in Government of India. Her current assignment is Joint Secretary in Ministry of Women and Child Development, looking after flagship schemes pertaining to early childhood care and nutrition. She is also a nodal officer of the ministry for all G20 related engagements. Her prior assignments include plantation sector, state trading and trade policy divisions in the Department of Commerce. She has also served in the Directorate General of Foreign Trade and the Directorate General of Anti-Dumping and Allied Duties, among other distinguished positions in related sectors. So as you can see, we have a distinguished panelist to join us on this very important discussion. So let us welcome to our panelists to please join me on screen. Hello, everyone. Hello. It's such a pleasure to have all of you joining us in this session. I hope you can all hear my voice.
Yes, clear.
Yes?
Yes, clear, Kania. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. It's such a pleasure to have all of you joining us in this session. Before we continue, I'd like to invite all of our speakers to join our audience as well for a brief photo session, as in the first session. And for this, I'd also like to invite Ibu Leni and Rosalyn, the Deputy Minister for Gender Equality, and Ibu Yesi Desio Setia, our G20 Empower Chairwoman, and also Ibu Rinawati Prihatiningsi, G20 Empower Co-Chairwoman, and Ibu Eko Novi to join us on this photo opportunity, a photo group. Okay, so if you can all please turn on your video camera, all is on, and put your best smiles, of course. And I will do the countdown on the count of 3, 2, 1. Thank you very much for that. I think we're going to do another one with the audience as well. Another one? Okay, let's do the countdown once again. 3, 2, 1. Very well, thank you. Okay, so as in the first session, we're going to have a discussion for the first 30 to 35 minutes. We'll open a Q&A session in the last 15 minutes. We're going to involve the audience as well. So again, I'd like to invite the audience to, if you have any questions for our speakers, to please submit your questions in the chat box, and we will pick some to be answered by our speakers later during our Q&A. So let us start with our discussion. I'd like to start with Dr. Fatma Betul Sayankaya. It's a pleasure to have you with us. Thank you again for joining us.
I want to urge something. I'm on my way to a funeral. If you can give me like 20 minutes so that I will be the second or third speaker, because now I'm in the car and I'm on the funeral way.
I'm very sorry for that. My condolences.
It's possible.
Okay, so so you would like to be the last speakers instead of the first one? Is that
question?
Okay.
That's great for me. Thank you very much.
Very well, very well. We'll get back to you right after this. Thank you so much for joining us nonetheless. Let's go to Ms. Yankel.
Okay. Thank you very much for having me. It's an honor and a pleasure to have such a wonderful discussion with people from all over the world,
right?
Many women, and discuss how we can improve the situation.
Right, right. Thank you so much for joining us.
It was very interesting to see what the, sorry?
Go ahead.
It was very interesting to hear what all the employers, the large companies, are introducing, with a very wide range of care and understanding and thoughtfulness. And I expect, we all expect in Germany, in view of the lack of enough skilled workers, that this will enhance even an SME who might feel it different. Well, I have a few preliminary remarks before this starts. We also need legislation and political action to set boundaries to discrimination for women and other minority group. Well, women are not minority group, but you know what I mean, LGBT and things. And in 1994, after the unification of Germany, we had a bit renovation of our constitution and introduced in the article that states men and women are equal, that the state has to take active action in order to eliminate disadvantages which appear. So now we come back to this, to my presentation. Why are things so difficult, and why was the burning glass of the pandemic so strong and gave us such bad results? We felt, or we realized, that the care for children and family members who need particular care still rests on the shoulders of the women. And they may work, but then once they come home, it's more on them than on the men to look after this unpaid work in the families. Also, we realized, due to the effects of the pandemic on the women, in a very clear sense, that women work in sectors where the work was particularly affected, which is health, education, hospitality. They, in one way or another, they were extremely affected. And the third point that I'd like to make is that we have a support by tax for families. So if there's only one earner in the family, there will be a certain tax levy which will not apply to those where both of the family work. Okay. So that's sort of an old, still a setting of a fairly old-fashioned role model. We feel that the miracle of numbers is the way to get out of it and to grow understanding by people why we have to get out of it. We already mentioned the pay gap, there is a pension gap, there is a care gap, and there are many other part-time work gaps. And making those visible really eases the discussion. Although the colleague from Australia already mentioned the incentives to have more female representation on management of companies. There can be incentives, and we also introduced a law which obliges certain companies, as from a certain size of companies, to introduce not an equal representation, but still to start with a certain representation. And a third instrument that we feel is very effective, and the new coalition in its agreement pointed out that they will do that a lot stronger than so far, is adopt gender mainstreaming for government action, laws and finance. Again, that's a miracle of numbers where you cannot discuss about feelings, but where it's clear, where does the money go? Okay. What can we do now to make it easier for women to partake in their work, in the workforce? It's enabling flexible work hours, setting rules to protect them, and to, when they work at home, work security. That is a lesson which was learned in the COVID pandemic, and now it will be fairly easy to introduce, because they realized out of the emergency of the pandemic, things actually did work in home office and remote work situations. We will find instruments to encourage more equal distribution of the unpaid work in the families. And we will more ensure affordable childcare facilities. And we introduced part-time apprenticeship, for example, where young mothers can do their apprenticeships in a longer term, but still have the chance to stay with their family and look for their children. Could I have the next slide, please? Hello?
This is Is this, you have another slide?
Yeah. Unfortunately, my computer, I have it on my computer, but it's just dropped.
I think that was the last slide.
That was the last slide. Okay.
Okay. What was on your last slide that you would like to add? Go ahead.
So we introduce more single steps. Let me get to violence in the family and in the workplace. There is an anti-discrimination law that we introduced way before the pandemic, where there is a chance to complain. There are places that women can go to complain officially. And that's run by the Federal Ministry for Families, Females, Seniors, and social issues in this matter. We will try, our Federal Minister for Labor will try to more secure the height of wages. So we realize that in those branches of economy where women are predominantly active, the average wage is a lot less than in those industrial workplaces where there are trade unions and where they have agreements on the monthly paid wage. So we try to push that. Then there is a program to make more incentives for young girls to open up for traditional male education and professions, which is tech, or the MINT regions and industries. So we try to diversify more the regions where women work and where men work in the hope that all the gaps will be closed better. So thank you very much. I'm sorry for the cock up that my computer just collapsed.
It's no problem. Thank you for that, Ms. Yankel. That was quite insightful. But how do you just a follow-up question on these on these presentations, on these slides that you've just presented to us? How do you make sure that these policies and regulations are translated into the private sectors, and that they will adopt and also promote, not only adopt, but also promote gender empowerment policy in across sector?
Well, we have labor security laws and labor protections laws, which are applicable for everybody. Just like I posted in the chat, we have a law for protection of mothers, and there it's regulated that the employer has to give them the chance to go to see their doctor and to breastfeed their child. So that's an obligatory law obliging every employer. Some of the laws, like the women in leadership positions, will only apply to larger companies and then gradually change in the future. But that's the way we do it. There are just laws that will force the employers to apply to these rules.
Okay. What about informal sectors, Ms. Yankel?
Like you're talking about the new economy?
Yes.
Where people are not really employed. So all what I'm saying is obviously only applicable to people in a serious employment. Now, if we have people like Lieferando or something where they only work on a platform in the internet and are more or less self-employed, we saw that in the pandemic again. That's not only female, but anybody as being self-employed was really in danger. We are looking into possibilities to open up social security for them and to apply again some sort of labor protection law, even for those who are self-employed. Obviously, it's not so easy because there is a freedom of being self-employed, and yet we see that with things like Amazon and others, it is very difficult to actually see a certain freedom for the individual driver who's doing the job. So yes, we are aware of that danger and try to fix it this way.
It is going to be addressed eventually. Thank you so much. Let's move on to our speaker. Our next speaker is Mr. Sanusi from Indonesia. We heard like a keynote speech from the Minister of Labor, Ms. Ida Fauzia, earlier, and who also mentioned that in terms of gender gap in Indonesia, it is actually improving despite the pandemic. The minister mentioned the gender gap has continued to decline from 2015, and it is now to achieved a number of 28.93% just last year. So tell us what has been the experience like for the Indonesian government in terms of policy and regulation in enhancing women's position in public and also the private sector? What has worked and what has not worked, and what are the challenges, and how has the Indonesian government addressed these challenges and improved situation for women?
Yeah, thank you very much, Kania. I think your question is very serious question that we need to answer, and then also we need to prepare with a good data. So that's why I prepare to in my presentation. So please show my presentation. I prepare maybe some slides in explaining the questions from Kania. That's now I would like give the the data about the condition of Indonesian women in the workforce during the pandemic COVID-19. When we look at the data, since the economic pressure occurs during the pandemic, women working age with low education, means it's junior high school or below, is become more active in labor market. Women who take care of the house that become to workforce. So so I means that this condition give a very strong message that the role of women are very effective and then also very powerful in supporting the economic of household. The reason is they help to family income when a husband or male family members become unemployed during the pandemics. This is also interesting. If you look at actually not in the others condition, we call it in Indonesian is the women with us the head of the family. We call it in Indonesia is perkasa, perempuan peka, perempuan kepala keluarga. The role of the women, the chair who lead the family is also getting stronger. Look at the next data. Next slide. Yeah, this is one. It's even though, but this is also this condition. Even though maybe the role is becoming stronger, but and also more active in the labor markets. Women with low education tend to be more vulnerable to entering informal work and agriculture businesses. That can be seen from the increasing percentage of women workers in the informal sectors and agriculture business in 2020. This condition because the formal sector is also under pressure due to the pandemic. This can be seen from the average working hours per week and decreasing average monthly wage from for formal sectors workers or employers. Of course, maybe the pandemic COVID-19, everybody knows that has impacted not only for the health condition, but also economic condition as well as a social condition. Economic condition, we know that especially in labor sectors is so strong. A lot of people lose the job to be unemployment. This is, I think, maybe why this the condition can explain why the formal sector are very, very strongly influenced by the pandemic COVID-19. And then the next slide. Of course, maybe next slide. Yeah, we look at the condition also still for junior school and high school, and then also senior high school, and then diploma university, and then also women employment rate by age groups. That's we look at unemployment of women in the secondary higher education group and young age will recover relatively quickly in 2021. However, unemployment rate for women with low education, junior high school and above 25 years old is still increasing. Usually unemployed with this characteristic are those who come from the poor families. This is the condition of the employment sectors during the pandemic. Indonesia is introducing a lot of kind of a policy in how to make it the impact of the pandemic COVID-19 is not maybe it can be reduced. We introduce a lot of policy. One policy is we like providing. We call it as like cash for works programs. A lot of maybe a government's project change from the heavy maybe heavy tools to be the like for the people. This one is also, so that's why there is. I would like give maybe since of the limitation time. I will give next slide. It's some of lesson learned that we can see for the condition of Indonesian women workforce during the pandemic. Structurally, a pandemic has further reduced the position of bargaining power of women's workers. This condition is a big challenge in efforts to create safe working conditions for women workers. This is one of the root causes of the phenomenon of unequal wage for the men, risk and harassment and violence in the workplace, lack of facilities in the workplace for the special needs of women workers, barriers in trading career paths, violation of the rights of human workers, etc. The structural condition can be spared from the existing cultural condition. So I would like to say cultural and structural condition are strongly correlated. There is still an assumption of the real main task of women is a household chores. Meanwhile, the main task of the man is to earn a living for the family through job in the public sector. This assumption creates a symptom to underestimate women who work in the non-domestic sectors. This is maybe the condition we could look at the lesson learned from Indonesian women's workforce during the pandemic. I would like give maybe the last slide. It says what the creatings is. This is close with my what I have to explain. The creation of safe working condition for women workers is done actually through development of employment that is not only inclusive but also comprehensive, both from demand and supply side. From the demand side, the government of Indonesia has and will continue to do some activities. For instance, is to push equal employment opportunity program campaign in the workflow or in the workplace, and then through communication, education, socialization of sexual harassment to all employees, as well as building company commitment through policies that prohibit sexual harassment and strict sanction as regulated in company policies, regulation, and collective labor agreement. And then also we encourage the provision of lactation and child care homes in the company. And this is also very important with subsidy assistance, including for women workers. This is from the demand side that we wish to do so far, and then we will continue. And then from the supply side, the government of Indonesia has and will continue to massification of increasing the competence of women workforce either through formal education and non-formal education such as pre-employment cards, or Indonesia we call it as kartu prakerja, and then also job training through conventional like is community-based vocational training, and then also mobile training unit, apprenticeship, productivity increase, talent hub, and then also training for prospective women Indonesian migrant workers. And then also we introducing such instrument in we call it as dismigrative. Desmi Kreatif is Desa Migran Kreatif, is a creative village migrants. This is such a collaboration program that initiated by some ministries. For instance, as Ministry of Villages, Ministry of Cooperative and Small Medium Enterprise, and then also Ministry of Manpower. And then also, the last we bring up the skill of women workers in entrepreneurship. In this case, the Ministry of Manpower has beginner and advanced self-employment program. This is that all I would like to share for the policy regarding the safer workplace for women during the COVID-19 pandemic from Indonesians' experience. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Sanusi, for that insightful presentation. That was quite the eye-opener. And also, maybe I would like to move on to our next speaker, Ms. Aditi Dasrao, to speak on behalf of India and share with us what has been the experience like, as was mentioned earlier as well by Mr. Sanusi and also by Mr. Yankel, how the traditional role model of women has put up pressure, and in the case of India, in the case of Indonesia, as an example, it has further reduced the bargaining power of women as they enter the labor force. So let's move on to Ms. Aditi Dasrao and share with us what has been the experience like for India.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much for this opportunity. At the outset, I hope I'm audible.
Sorry?
Am I audible?
Yes, yes. The floor is yours.
At the outset, I'd like to congratulate the G20 Empower Indonesia chairperson for hosting this side event on a very important issue that has provided us with an opportunity to learn from each other's experiences about how the workplace has been made safer for women in the post-COVID situation. In fact, the previous session gave us some very useful insights on how the private sector has ensured this. I'd like to say that India is fully committed to taking the global agenda of gender equality in the post-COVID world to its logical conclusion and to the elimination of all forms of discrimination, disadvantages, and violence against women. Today, India is witnessing a rapid transition from women's development to women-led development. While the COVID-19 pandemic has disproportionately affected women more than men, in that the care work has increased, domestic violence is reported to have decreased in India, and the impact on overall employment has been temporary. I have some slides which I'd like to share with you. But before I start with our slide presentation, I'd like to share some very interesting data. The government of India has, in fact, conducted a quarterly employment survey as a component under the All India Quarterly Establishment-Based Employment Survey, which is done by the Labour Bureau, to assess the impact of the COVID-19 on operational and employment status of establishments in 9 select sectors. And these include manufacturing, construction, trade, transport, education, health, accommodation and restaurants, IT, BPOs, and financial services. Well, as per the reported data, there were a total of 9 million female employees prior to the lockdown, that is before the 25th of March 2020, which reduced to about 8% as on 1st July 2020. But the second quarterly employment survey 2021 has reported that the number of female employees as of the 1st of July 2021 has been almost 32% of the total. That is, it has increased by nearly 10% over the pre-lockdown period and 20% over post-COVID lockdown period. Coming to the safeguards, I would say that our legislative safeguards have been supporting women in the workplace, adjusting as they are to the new normal. While legislations like the Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act 2006 and the Dowry Prohibition Act have been enacted to ensure the protection of women from violence and harassment within the home, the Sexual Harassment of Women at the Workplace Prevention, Prohibition and Redressal Act has enacted to provide safe and secure work environment to women. This act upholds women's fundamental right to equality as guaranteed under the Article 14 and 15 of the Indian Constitution, the right to live with dignity under Article 21, and the right to practice any profession or to carry on with any occupation, trade, or business, which includes the right to a safe working environment free from sexual harassment, as guaranteed under Article 19 of the Constitution. This Act covers all women irrespective of their age and protects them against harassment at all workplaces, both in public and private sectors, whether organized or unorganized. The domestic workers are also included under the ambit of this Act. The Act has also cast an obligation upon all organizations, whether in the private or public sector, having more than 10 employees to constitute internal committees for receiving complaints of sexual harassment. Similarly, federal states in India are authorized to constitute local committees in every district, which will receive complaints from organizations having less than 10 workers. Our government has also amended the company account rules, thereby making the disclosure regarding the implementation of this Act mandatory in the director's report. Government has also come out with a handbook on the sexual harassment of women at the workplace in an easy-to-use practical manner. In addition, we have developed an online complaint management system, which is referred to as the Sexual Harassment Electronic Box or the SHE box, for registering complaints related to sexual harassment at the workplace. This is an effort to provide a single window access to every woman, both in the organized or unorganized sectors, private or public sectors, to facilitate registration of complaints. And once a complaint is submitted to the SHE box, it is directly sent to the concerned authority having the necessary jurisdiction to take action in the matter. India has consolidated almost 29 central labor laws into 4 codes, that is on wages, social security, occupational health, and industrial relations. This has all been approved by the Parliament. The new labor laws are actually aimed at facilitating the ease of doing business, as well as to replace 29 cumbersome laws which are prevalent. The objective, however, is to encompass over as many as 500 million organized as well as unorganized sector workers who have been outside the ambit of labor laws. Here, I'd also like to briefly touch upon, next slide, please. May I have the next slide? I would also like to briefly touch upon some of the schematic interventions which have been developed for the safety of women and their empowerment. These have all been developed under a framework which is known as the Nirbhaya framework. These include schemes like the One-Stop Center scheme, which is popularly known as the Saki centers, to facilitate women who are affected by violence, including domestic violence, with a range of integrated services under one roof, such as police facilitation, medical aid, provision of legal aid and legal counseling, psychosocial counseling, temporary shelter, etc. I would like to mention that counselors, psychosocial counselors are being trained through the National Institute of Mental Health and Neurosciences for engagement with the one-stop centers. And today we have as many as 704 centers which are operational in 35 states, and more than 490,000 women have been assisted. We have a women helpline scheme which is being implemented since the 1st of April 2015. And the aim is to provide an immediate and 24-hour emergency and non-emergency response to women by linking them with appropriate authorities such as the police, one-stop center, hospitals, and legal services. The Women Helpline is today operational in 34 states and has handled as many as 6.8 million calls from aggrieved women. We also have an emergency response support system, which is a pan-India single number for various emergencies. And this is only for police, fire, and ambulance services, which are given on an emergency basis. We have safe city projects, which are integrated projects developed by the police and municipal corporations in 8 metro cities to ensure women's safety in these metropolitan areas. And the project seeks to add many dimensions for safety of women, such as use of drones, installation of CCTV cameras with facial recognition, automatic number plate recognition to track and alert police about criminals, and technology-enabled infrastructure like smart lighting systems, which glow as soon as it gets dark to eliminate dark alleys and crime hotspots from cities. Besides this, as is given on the slide, we have a cyber crime prevention portal against women and children. And we have also set up women help desks in as many as 10,000 police stations all over the country. Besides this, may I have the next slide, please? Besides this, we have taken several other initiatives to support and protect the interest of women entrepreneurs and the workforce through packages which are known as Self-Reliant India packages or the Atmanirbhar Bharat packages to combat the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. In order to enhance employability of women workers, the government is providing training through a network of women industrial training institutes, national vocational training institutes, and regional vocational training institutes. We are implementing the National Career Service Project under the Ministry of Labour, where a variety of employment-related services like job search, career counseling, vocational guidance, information on skill development courses, etc. are provided on a common platform with efficient use of information technology. The NCS is a mission mode project which has been launched in 2015, and it reaches out to people of the country through 3 pillars: the NCS portal, a countrywide setup of nodal career centers, and interlinkages with all states through employment exchanges. In August 2021, the Ministry of Labour also launched what is known as the e-Shram portal with an objective to create a national database of unorganized workers to facilitate delivery of social security schemes. This project covers migrant workers, construction workers, gig workers, platform workers, etc. I think I will leave it at that. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you so much for sharing that extensive policy and regulation that has been in place in India and how it has addressed some of the issues pertaining to sexual harassment and domestic violence that women experience and what the government has done about this. But we have about like 9 more minutes. I would like to give the last opportunity to Dr. Fatma Betul Sayankaya, who is also joining us for this panel. I am not sure if she's available to share with us right now her experience, especially in Turkey. Dr. Fatma Betul Sayankaya, are you with us? Okay. So we are trying to get her to share her experiences as well in this session. And at this point, I'd also like to invite the audience to give their questions as well through our Q&A box, questions that can probably be addressed to our panelists for this session. As we go through this really important session. I'd like to go back to Ms. Yankel for your view in how can G20 Empower contribute to advancing government regulation and policy to support when we talk about flexibility or adaptive action for women empowerment. How can G20 Empower be the place for that, especially post-COVID-19, moving forward? Ms. Yankel.
Yes, thank you very much for this important question. We learned now today that there are so many different paths reaching out for equal opportunities for men and women within labor force as far as violence is concerned or protection of violence is concerned, as well as well-being on the whole. And I think there's so many incentives that we really ought to learn. And while I was following this discussion, I wondered whether we could have sort of subtitles where the different countries could feed in their best of in order to learn from each other and then to make a good path for every country to adapt whatever is possible for them. Because we all are in different situations, in different religious backgrounds, in different economical backgrounds, family sizes, social protection systems. But still, I'm sure we can learn a lot of each other if we could make this information available for the entrepreneurs as well as the governments.
Very well. I would like to go to Mr. Sanusi then, if he's still available. Oh, so sorry. I'd like to go to Dr. Fatma Betul Sayankaya, who's now available to speak to us. Hello, Ms. Sayankaya.
Hello.
Again, our condolences and thank you so much for making the time to join us on this session. But if you can just give us a brief presentation or a brief remark on what your government has done in terms of a policy and also regulation to support women in enhancing their position in the public and also the private sector.
First of all,
What has been the challenge like?
It's a great pleasure to address you at this meeting. We feel very privileged that the W20 was established during the Turkey's presidency in 2015 to support G20's efforts in achieving inclusive growth and raising the profile of gender issues. Unfortunately, challenges related to gender inequality pervade G20 economies and beyond. COVID-19 pandemic also has severe impact. We know that on women's issues. Our government, Turkish government, has done a lot during the pandemic to lower down the effects of pandemic to women workers, especially. I would like to now briefly mention about the working life during the pandemic. In this respect, Turkish government issued several presidential circulars during the pandemic for protecting women workers from the side effects of the pandemic, negative impacts of the coronavirus. Some of the measures were particularly, especially related to women workers. For instance, female civil servants with children under the age of 10 were granted administrative leave in the most severe phase of the pandemic disease. Moreover, pregnant women in civil service are granted 6 extra weeks of administrative leave to safeguard the health of mothers and infants. Furthermore, the Human Rights Action Plan was made public by our President, Mr. Erdogan, on March 2021, and it is designed as a comprehensive plan aimed at enhancing all aspects of human rights, including measures to strengthen rights of women, flexible working models included in the labor law, which was prepared in accordance with the dynamic conditions of working life, have recently been actively implemented in our workers and employers. Along with the presidential circulars, there was a transition to the application of flexible working models in the public sector, such as teleworking and rotating shifts, so as not to cause any disruption in the provision of the application of these flexible working methods were mainly enjoyed by female workers in their efforts to make a right balance between their responsibilities both at home and at work. In order to ensure the continuity in employment, 2 months compensatory work time was increased to 4 months in this pandemic period. What's more, the eligibility criteria for the short-time working allowance, which had been put into practice in 2005, were changed during the pandemic so that more a total of 37 billion have been paid to nearly 4 million employees since the month of March within the scope of short-time working allowance. During the pandemic were provided with cash wage support of Turkey. In this context, at least 14 billion Turkish liras in total to 3 million people, 3 million employees were paid. During the pandemic, a payment of approximately 11 billion Turkish liras was made to nearly 2 million employees within the scope of unemployment benefits. Furthermore, various activities were conducted in order to ensure safer workplaces and to prevent the impacts of the pandemic as well as the risk of contagion originating from the working places. We gave premium support to women, youth, and holders of professional competence certificates The incentive of women, youth, and holders of professional competence certificate has been extended until the end of 2022. Also, the Turkish Employment Agency gave significant importance to especially women unemployed people in this pandemic time. I can give you some numbers. In 2020, nearly 300,000 people were placed in job, and in 2021, nearly 458,000 women were placed in jobs. And it was also ensured that one of the agenda topics of the most important meetings in the Provincial Employment and Vocational Education Board, which convenes 4 times a year. One of the most important topics is the women's employment topic. And during the pandemic period, women constituted 53% of the participants who benefited from the courses and programs organized within the scope of active labor market programs. And we have another program, Job Club activities. We have made our Job Club service online since 2020. This offers concentrated jobs and career counseling for groups requiring special policies in the labor market, such as women, youth, and ex-convicts. Thus, we ensure that job seekers and students continue to benefit from job clubs during the pandemic period also. And more than 38,000 people participated in the online trainings until the end of February. We are fully aware that women are the agents of change and solution in our society, and we will continue to support the strengthening of women's rights at international level too. And on the note, I would like to also mention that UN Women is among the institutions with which Turkey maintains a very close relationship. Establishment of the UN Women Regional Office in Istanbul was a concrete step towards the empowerment of women. It also is a testament of Turkey's close interest and support. Welcome the fact with the launch of W20 during the Turkish presidency in 2015. Empowering women became an important focus of G20 by W20. And in conclusion, I'd like to state that Turkey will continue to strongly support efforts to mitigate the negative impacts of the pandemic on women and girls, not only at home, but also globally. And hence, we will continue to fully contribute to G20's overarching goal of a truly inclusive economic government. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Ms. Sayan Kaya. Thank you for sharing insights on how policies and also regulations in Turkey has supported women, especially during this pandemic. As we can see, the impact of the pandemic is not only disproportionate on a general level, but also on a country level. And as was also mentioned earlier by Ms. Yenko, forums like this could bring about could bring about changes or strengthen our women empowerment agenda, as we can learn from each other, especially through the best practices. And as we all believe that as we progress towards the end of the pandemic, which we are hoping to see eventually, that this agenda will only get better, that women can also play a role in promoting economic development and can also contribute to the betterment of welfare and society. So for this to happen, also we need the collaboration in between the public and the private sector, as was highlighted by the different presentations from each of the government representatives that are here with us today. We can see that the government also can play an important role, especially in stimulating and also enabling and facilitating to minimize the gender gap, especially in the workplace, and also creating a safer environment for women to participate in economic access and opportunities. So I think that's all the time that we have for now. Thank you so much for our speakers. I'm very sorry that the time is very tight, so I don't think we're able to take some questions from the audience, but thank you again for sharing your insights with us during the second session. And with that, I'd like to hand back the session to Ms. Tira Lundi, our MC. The screen is yours.
Thank you so much, Ms. Kania, as the moderator, and also thank you to all the speakers. Please give a virtual applause. So, ladies and gentlemen, before we end today's event, recap and closing remarks will be delivered by Chairwoman of G20 Empower. Please welcome Ms. Yesi Yosetia.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, Excellencies, distinguished G20 Empower delegates, advocates, invitees, ladies and gentlemen. I wish to thank all participants for today's fruitful discussion on creating a safer place for women in this recovery era from the COVID-19 pandemic. It is made possible because of the excellent quality of the different presentations and pertinent contribution. So, in this point in time, may I thank all the participants and the speakers who shared and exchanged good practices in creating adaptive actions to support women empowerment post-COVID. To name every contributions this afternoon, I would like to especially thank Ibu Leni Rosalin, Deputy Minister of Gender Equality. I would also like to thank Ibu Ida Fauzia, our High Excellency Minister of Labor of Republic of Indonesia. My partner in crime, Ibu Rinawati Prihatiningsi and Ibu Eko Novi Arianti as the co-chair of G20 Empower. I would like to also thank heartily for Ibu Margaret from Netherlands, Ibu Sinta Kamdani from Indonesia, Ibu Barbara Cominelli from Italy, Pak Willy Sailan from Unilever Indonesia, Ibu Romeli Medu from Australia, and the last panel that is moderated by Bu Kania from Indonesia. I would like to also thank Ibu Fatima from Turkey. I understand the circumstances, big condolences for you as well. I would like to thank Ms. Yankel from Germany, Pak Anwar Sanusi from Indonesia, and Ibu Aditi from India. Right, so let me attempt to summarize, which I believe came up in today's proceedings. Right, I think that today's panel discussion not only opened the challenges, but also revealed some of the ways to ensure women could stay and actively participate in their workplace, both from private and public sector. It is great to see commitment from various private sectors and governments from Italy, Australia, from Indonesia, from Germany, India, and Turkey that supports women reaching their full potential as part of the global workforce. From private sector, we learn some of the programs to support women, such as creating flexible or hybrid working policies post-COVID, workplace to workforce-centric model, shifting from seeing a workplace as a place to platform, to collaborate, to socialize, to learn, and to innovate, and other various programs that ensuring women's mental health are well taken care of. From government side, we could see those various regulations to ensure women could actively participate in the workforce. Regulations to support flexible working models, regulations to support working allowance, and regulations to make gender gap visible and set incentive for more female representation in the management of companies. From today's session, we see that proactive actions from private sectors and public sector are indeed integral in ensuring women could have safe workplace in post-COVID-19 pandemic. I believe more can be done. I hope all the participants in today's session are as inspired as I am and are encouraged to take some bold actions, just like our spokesperson today in ensuring women could actively participate in economic development. So we all could recover together, recover stronger. Lastly, I would like to thank all of our G20 Empower team and those who attended this meeting online from across the globe. We thank you for all your time and participation. Thank you and good evening.
Thank you, Ms. Yesi Josetia, for your recap and your closing remarks. So, ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of G20 Empower side event. We thank you all for your time and participation. And once again, allow us to extend our gratitude to our sponsor, Sinarmas. Thank you for supporting this event. And for more information on G20 Empower, please follow our official social media account. Instagram at G20 Empower, LinkedIn G20 Empower, Twitter G20 Empower, website www.g20empower-indonesia.org, and YouTube G20 Empower. I'm Tira Lundi signing off. See you on the next G20 Empower event and have a pleasant day.